Good evening and welcome to the Gladstone Planning Commission regular meeting on Tuesday, June 17th at 6:30 p.m. I'd like to call to order our meeting. Could we have a roll call count, please?
Commissioner Volbada,
Yes.
Commissioner Weiss,
Here.
Commissioner Langston,
Present.
Commissioner Carlson,
Here.
Commissioner Brennan,
Here.
Chair Smith.
Present. Let's do the flag salute. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we start the meeting, I would like us to go through the process of declaring Pat Smith's position vacant so that we can start posting to get applicants to apply for Planning Commission. Is there anything else that we need to do? Take a vote? Nothing? Just declare that it's vacant?
Yeah, just, he has submitted his official resignation from the Planning Commission. Yes.
Okay. Okay, so if you know of anyone here, if you know of anyone that would like to join in as a volunteer on the Planning Commission that has good thoughts and visions for our city, please encourage them to get an application online and submit it. Thank you.
And we will be putting information on social media as well as our newsletter, putting that information out, and that'll include the membership qualifications.
Perfect, because there are some qualifications, so that'd be great. Should I refer to chapter 2.42 of the Planning Commission? Would that be online for anyone to go ahead and review?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, starting with section 2.42.010. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, on the consent agenda, I'm assuming you want me to read that paragraph, correct?
Yes, please.
Okay. All items listed below are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a commission member or person in the audience requests specific items be removed from the consent agenda for discussion prior to the time the commission votes on the motion to adopt the consent agenda. Item number 1, approval of May 20th, 2025 meeting minutes. Item number 2, monthly planning report from May 2025. Item number 3, we'll continue with our discussion of design review processes and updates to the Gladstone Municipal Code, GMC, Chapter 17.80, Design Review Standards. And then there'll be business from the public, business from the Planning Commission, and then we will adjourn. Item number 1, please, the meeting minutes.
I think we need to do consent agenda first with the minutes.
That's what I just said.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. I said item number 1, which is the approval of the meeting minutes.
Yes.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from May 20th, 2025.
Second.
Okay, the motion was made by Commissioner Volbada and seconded by Commissioner Brennan. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Brennan,
Yes.
Commissioner Carlson,
Yes.
Commissioner Langston,
Yes.
Commissioner Weiss,
Yes.
Commissioner Volbada,
Yes.
Chair Smith.
Yes, meeting minutes have been approved. Item number 2, our monthly planning report. Staff?
Thank you, Chair Smith. The May planning report is in your packet. It does have an error in it. I noticed last week that the customer phone and email contacts is not 3, it's 33. So that slipped by. Apologies for that. So we didn't stop answering the phones and responding to emails. I promise we kept it up. But other than that, everything was pretty normal numbers wise. The city council did take up the town center, and then just as an update on June 10th, they did do the second reading. So that's all approved and in the process of becoming effective. And we've submitted for the grant reimbursement because that was all grant funded by the state. So that's all in progress. We didn't have any pre-applications in May. But I did want to point out on the second page of the report, the new section called limited land use decisions. So now as I review things from a staff level that may have previously come to planning commission, I'll list them there and we can talk about them and let you know what's going on with those. So the Gladstone Nature Park loop, trail loop, is in design review right now. Today was the last day for public comments on that. And I spoke to one person on the phone who lives near the parking area and just wanted to make sure that their fence wasn't impacted, which it's not. But otherwise, no feedback really positive or negative from people who live near the trail. So I'll be moving forward with that, probably able to do a notice of decision with conditions in the next week or two. So just so you guys know that's coming or that's happening outside of this body.
Even though we don't have any input on this, when you get the application, can we at least see it, what it looks like?
I'm not sure. It's a little questionable I mean, yes, you can see it because it's public record.
Yeah,
I
because we should know what, I mean,
Yeah.
whether we have input or we vote on it or not.
Yeah, I would just want to.
As a commission, we should be aware of what's going to happen there.
Yeah, I would just want to be careful that you don't give any kind of feedback to me in any kind of formal way.
Okay.
Anyone can provide public testimony on it individually, but it just can't be a planning commission discussion.
No, I totally understand.
But so would you want to see those up front or like after they're done and you can see what's, I guess.
I mean, I think just seeing the application once you receive it, just to give us a heads up.
Yeah.
And there'll be no comments. We'll have an opportunity to look at it and see it and know what's going on. And if we get asked I don't know about anybody else here on the commission, but I often get stopped by citizens because I've lived here long enough. Most go, hey, what's going on? It's such and such. And I know that in the past, quite a while ago, when we used to have another person, two, three people before, things like that would happen and we'd have no idea what was going on. So I think it would be better for us on the commission just to know what's going on.
Yeah, I'm wondering, Tammy, if we can even like put a link on the website to the public notice as they're being created.
Yeah, we can talk.
That would be great too.
And then that way you could say, even if someone's asking you, yeah, that is going on, you can look for more details on the website.
I like that. I like that a lot. Yeah.
We can
We'll
work on that.
Yeah,
It makes
work
the
on that.
commission look bad when we have no idea what's going on.
No,
It just-
totally, yeah.
It does.
Absolutely.
So,
And
Thank-
it's not about not wanting you to know what's going on. It's just about wanting to make sure we follow the proper procedure. But if it's there and available to anyone, and then we're updating this body.
and I should have polled everybody. How do you all feel about that idea?
I like that idea a lot. Yeah.
What about you? You're okay with that?
I think that's nice too, just so we're not discussing it amongst ourselves in a public meeting also.
Correct.
Mhm.
Agreed, just like a heads up of what the general, what's going on, and then if we need to like drill down on any lessons learned on code, after it's been approved and out of your hands, so that there's no,
Yeah.
there's no
Like-
possibility of us making any
Issue.
influence. We could probably bring it back at that
That's an
point.
outstanding idea, Jennifer. I like that.
Well, and that dovetails nicely into your idea at the last meeting about checking back in sort of regularly and seeing how it's going, seeing if there's anything. Yep. That sounds
Because
good.
I mean, for the longest time, the corner there at Arlington and Portland Avenue, which is now just becoming a parking lot. Neighbors, people I
Yeah.
pass, what's going on down there?
Yeah.
And it's, yeah, okay, so see, when people know that you're on the planning commission, they expect you to be able to, and I like the fact you're talking about a link because that's, so we don't say anything or elaborate on anything. We just send them to the link and they can review it themselves.
Yeah.
So
That
I
sounds
like
great.
that idea.
Okay.
Okay, great.
And
I'm sorry I interrupted you. Would you please continue?
no, that's great. And that's what we'll talk more about this evening as well. But I just wanted to make you all aware that there is one that is in review. And then we had a pre-application today for Ron Tonkin Kia. They're doing a small, the whole front of it will be mostly glass now. So it's like, changing to their new branding, much like the other dealership improvements that we've had recently. But again, no real site changes or anything like that. So I did talk with them about how, we're working on making the code more easily usable as far as how it applies to metal and things like that. But they may end up submitting under the current code. And we talked about what that would look like. So I did say that if they couldn't meet what's in the code now for metal materials, then we would be looking at a variance that would come to this body. So we'll see. To be determined on that one. Any questions about the planning report?
Any questions? I don't have any, but thank you very much for working with us and trying to, just so that we're aware and in the loop.
Definitely.
Greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay.
Maybe just one question. Wong's Building Supply, are they still planning on moving forward?
Yes, definitely. They just this week paid for their pre-permit site meeting with Public Works, which is the point where they go on site and say, yep, you've got all your plans approved. Here's where you're going to do the work. And then they pay their final fees, like their system development charges, and then they get to start working on it.
They've
So-
already obtained their permits.
I think
They did get a demo permit quite a while ago, and then they've been in building permit. And then at the same time, they're in building permit at Clackamas County. They're in for public works permits from the city, as well as right-of-way permits from ODOT.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Any other further questions before we move on? So let me go back to my sheet here. Item number 3, continued discussion of design review process and updates to Gladstone's municipal code. Staff?
Yes, thank you. So I did not prepare another slideshow this time, just because we talked about providing sample code language and talking about that. So the memo that I put in the packet, that's page 13 of 43 or 3-1, does talk about the items that we carried forward from last time. And then based on our discussions at the last meeting, I added certain things like the setback between a building over 1 story and a 1-story residential, threshold for building design standards. So we had talked about over 12 dwelling units, but I realized it also applies on commercial or non-residential. So I threw in there a 1/2 acre size lot to make it a little bit of a bigger size, but we can talk about that threshold as well. I clarified the lighting requirements per our discussion last time. Took a stab at the street facing architectural metal panels language. And then landscaping, we talked about native drought tolerant landscaping and high efficiency irrigation systems. And then I also added that we could reference the Clackamas County street tree list. We've been doing that on the side as a policy between Public Works and Planning. When people say, what kind of street trees should I plant? We've been referring them to that, but we could make that formal.
Okay.
And then I went through chapters 17.48, which is off-street parking and loading, and 17.50, which is our vehicle and pedestrian circulation. Those are both applicable to design review as well, but I didn't see a lot of items in there that we really needed to address right now. It's mostly clear and objective. It's clearly been made clear and objective. And parking standards will only apply in those areas of town where there's no mandates when an applicant decides to provide parking, and they'll be still subject to those standards. So unless anybody has issues they want to address with parking or with circulation, which we certainly can do. The other thing I'll mention is City Administrator Betts said that she would really like this to go to hearing with this body in August rather than July. Because of the schedule for the city council, it's best to take this up in September. So we do have a little more time too. We're not in a rush. Hopefully that works for everybody here. I know we're trying to get it in place, but just to be able to match the city council's schedule, because we do have the annexation on Kirkwood in the queue. So that's what we're planning to bring you in July. Kirkwood, yes. Off Webster. Yeah. Have we not talked about that one before? I'm sorry.
No.
You.
I don't remember. Does anybody else
Okay.
remember Kirkwood?
Oh, so we've been working.
Do not recall on that.
See it right here.
Yeah, I think I've been adding it into the notice that it's coming. It's 3 lots that are adjacent to the city limits on Kirkwood. They are all on septic systems and in different
those
levels of
lots.
needing to be hooked to sanitary. So we are in the process of working with them to go through an annexation procedure. There are city utilities available that they can tap into once they come into the city limits.
They actually came before the planning commission, those residents.
That's what I was recalling. I
Yeah.
think, yeah. But like
That was a while ago, but I
Yeah.
have one of those memories. Yes, I do remember them coming.
I
for
believe the
this.
pre-application on it was last summer, and we were working well before that on this. So for me, it feels like it's been in process a long time.
Even longer than that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. it's been a while.
So that is a big project that we're working on to try to bring you all in July and then bring to the council in August. So we'd want to push this for August for this group and then September for the city council.
Oh, that's fine. How did you want to, because when I was looking at this over the weekend, should we go by each big blurb and just get a consensus from everyone?
Yeah, that would be great. I think that would be the right amount of
Yeah,
effort to put into it. So if we start on page 3-2,
yep.
and this is regarding
This
citing.
doesn't require us to vote, but you want a consensus if we all approve on this, right?
Yes, you will get a chance to vote on this language ultimately, but hopefully we come to some sort of consensus that we're comfortable with
Right.
what's being moved forward.
Okay.
So the idea for, I'm gonna just put my page so that I can see 17.44.020.
Mhm.
Number 1 is citing. This used to be applicable to any design review, but we talked about at the previous meeting, if it's residential, and I said residential or mixed use structure with more than 12 dwelling units. So that's where these standards would kick in. Anything less than that would be a pretty small project.
Yeah.
And then as far as it being non-residential, I used a half an acre as the threshold there. Just thinking, okay, that's about 20,000 square feet. It's kind of 4 standard lots. Seemed like a reasonable amount that above that it could have an impact. All the same standards would apply as far as height, setbacks, those types of things. So these are just, the other thing about it is because we're asking them to face their building a certain way, you have to have a certain size of lot to be able to have that flexibility to do that.
Okay.
So that's where that came in on number 1. That's just about citing the building so that you maximize your solar access and energy efficiency. Energy efficiency is number 2. And currently we say you have to do these 3 things. You have to concentrate windows on the south or within 20 degrees of true south, use architectural features, and provide skylights or clerestory windows. I was wondering if it might work to say, do one of these 3 things and just make it a clear checklist. Like one of these will meet energy efficiency. So you use whatever works on the site to make your choice of what works best.
And then that will,
Go ahead.
and then it's already gonna need one of those, then it'll allow them to kind of orientate it how they.
Right. Use a little bit of the topography of the site
Yeah.
that's already there,
Mhm.
existing surrounding uses, that sort of thing. So that it's hopefully the best scenario for how they locate on the lot.
How does everyone feel about that? I actually like what you said about making it clear so you can just check a box.
Yeah.
Mhm.
How does,
Yeah,
any questions or added input?
I think it's, for someone building something, it'll make it easier and allow them more opportunity to do something, maybe that meets more like what they were hoping to. So I think it's good.
Okay.
It's good.
Agreed. I think it provides enough direction that the designers and the property owners can make choices based on their actual space and
Yeah.
while adhering to code.
Mhm.
So I'm good.
Okay. Any other?
Yeah, I like your suggestion about these are your options, check. Okay,
Any other thoughts on that one?
Only thing is, these are your options and maybe it's just one or more, just to,
Yeah,
if I were reading it,
a
I think.
minimum of one.
Yeah.
good point.
Mhm.
Okay,
Okay, and I structured the next one similarly. So let me just put this section reference so I remember. 1744. Okay. So the next one has some notes on the side, and those are so this is about compatibility with the surrounding land uses. We used to say locate and design structures to protect scenic views or vistas from adjacent properties and public thoroughfares. Setbacks, building height, and bulk should be considered. So instead of having that be that subjective statement, I broke it out into more objective. So setbacks, new structures over 1 story or 12 feet in height or any portion thereof shall be set back a minimum of 5 feet from a property line adjacent to a property with a single story residential structure. This allows that sort of stepped back construction too, that if you want to come closer to the property line than the 5 feet,
Mhm.
you have to be single story until you get to that 5 feet, and then you could go to the 2 story.
I thought most setbacks were 10 feet. Some are 5, huh?
All side setbacks are 5 feet.
Okay,
Yeah, we don't actually have a 10-foot setback. We have a 15
15.
rear and a 20 front
Yeah.
in a lot of places, but not in commercial properties generally.
oh, this is pertaining to commercial.
This is, I mean, this would be everything. So
Okay.
anything that's being built on a parcel that's next to a single story residential structure would be subject to this, whether or not you're exempt from the C2 or C3. And that's why I have that little note mostly to myself that I might need to cross-reference this in C2 and C3, because I wouldn't want an applicant to just look at C2 and say, this is the zoning of my property. Oh, I have no setbacks.
Mm.
So I'd want to cross-reference and say, except where this section is applicable.
Yeah,
No setbacks except where.
I like that. That sounds good.
I like it.
Okay.
I mean, this is now the opportunity to really streamline all the verbiage so it's really easy to understand
Yes.
instead of complicated, because the easier it's,
Yeah. And when
I
you,
like simple.
when you read
Yeah.
the language that exists, though, you can see where they were going with it. You know, it was
Yeah.
meant to make it a really nice product to match what's in the neighborhood already and use high quality materials and design the site well. But now we just have to be really specific about, like, almost numerical about how these things are being prescribed.
Yeah.
So again, in B, I said that I removed design structures to provide visual order and avoid monotony in layout and design. I said I remove this because it's already required below in 1744-022 and 024, and in all town center C2 per downtown core overlay. So I felt like this was already addressed through other standards.
If we can go back, just the
Yeah.
5 feet for the over single story, that's not a maximum in the code, right? We're creating that.
There's nothing, so if you were building right now in C2 or C3, you wouldn't have a setback. Well, I take that back. In C2, there are no setbacks required. In C3, I do believe if you're adjacent to residentially zoned, you have a setback. So this would be, you know, this would really only apply in situations where you don't already have a setback.
But you would also be holden to locate and design structures to protect scenic views of vistas from adjacent properties.
Well, that would be what I'm trying to get at by using the setback and buffering standards, the language. So
Right, but this body could
this is
decide to
meant
go
to
at
do that.
10 feet instead of 5 feet if we wanted to.
Yeah, we could. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would like it to be 10 feet. But that's
Yeah,
just
5
me.
seems very small.
Yeah.
I was just thinking we did 5 on the ICSB to separate from that site, but that was a 2-story behind, I believe, so.
The applicant.
And that was also a decision that got discussed publicly and now
Right.
it won't be discussed publicly.
Yeah,
So
so
that's why.
yeah,
Go ahead, Joe.
The applicant could still apply for a variance too, couldn't they?
they can, yes. So up to 20% adjustment with their design review, but they have to make a compelling argument based on the adjustment criteria. And then anything more than that comes to the planning commission.
I don't know if now is the applicable time to bring this up, but moving forward, whatever we set in place, I'm hoping that we can eliminate any problems like what happened with that big apartment complex that have single-story houses. However, we have to word something to ensure, because a former, which was brilliant in my mind, planning commissioner said, why didn't they just reverse the plans? The parking lot should have been where all the houses are, and the tall apartment building should have been at the other end, which would have been, to me, is brilliant. I just want to make sure that whatever we do in regards to the verbiage we're using, that won't reoccur again.
Yeah.
Because even when you drive past it, it looks bizarre.
Yeah. And it's tough. That situation is tough because they're up on the hill, you know, you're not thinking like, oh, they're going higher.
But what I'm saying is we need to make sure that we look at that. If there's going to be something that's going to be 3 stories tall and there's single-story homes right in front of it, we need to be better about that.
What's the location of that?
Oh,
It's the Webster Ridge Apartments,
yeah.
Stone
but
Oak.
you can go on Oatfield
Yeah.
and see it, and
If you
because
go down Oakfield,
and look to your right.
there's like a cul-de-sac
There's a
right before you get
cul-de-sac,
to
yeah.
Webster.
Okay.
And those people down in that cul-de-sac, they're below the apartments.
Okay.
And they're just way up there. I don't know how, I mean, you could build a home up there and it probably would still have the same.
Just because of the topography
Yeah, the
difference.
I
Mhm.
don't know how you'd mitigate that.
Reverse the plans just like
Well,
that.
yeah.
I mean, that was
yeah,
brilliant.
yeah.
It's like, why didn't
Yeah.
they just reverse it?
Yeah.
That happened before my time.
Yeah. I mean, you could obviously suggest like, hey, how about you park on the outside and put the buildings on the inside, but
Wouldn't have
but it-
obstructed anybody's view.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, that would be a great suggestion. I just think, I don't know how you would create any language that would have stopped someone from.
So I'm calling on your expertise,
Well,
oh Heather, the planner.
Well, I'm thinking because they are residential though, that they probably have a 20-foot setback.
Yeah.
They,
I mean,
or
they're
a
not-
5, maybe a 5 if it's a side.
I don't
yard.
think it's a
Yeah.
20.
Maybe
Yeah,
it's a,
well, they're up on
they're
the
like
hill, and
right
the
in their
people are
backyard.
down-
yeah.
They're down on they're below. So I mean, I don't know. It might not be 20 feet.
I don't think it
as the
is.
crow flies, but are you
Yeah.
taking in consideration that they're
Well,
40 feet above?
I've never
them,
gone
you
into
know?
that cul-de-sac and said, can I look at your backyard? But from Oatfield,
not?
when you're looking there and I've pulled off to the
Yeah.
side, it looks like they go out to their backyard, and
Mhm.
boom,
Yeah,
there's
Yeah.
apartments right there.
yeah.
so
I
I
just want us to figure out a way to make that be a serious consideration.
Yeah, and I think increasing the setback, that doing a 10-foot would be fine. So I just went back to the C3 just to refresh my memory, and only in the front or street side do we say that you have a 20-foot setback there. Side and rear, there's no minimum setback
Oh, yeah.
in C3, and then in C2, so in the Old Town overlay, we have a 5-foot maximum front setback because we want everything pulled up to the street. So this, whatever we put into place, if you want to build something more than 1 story adjacent to 1 story, this would apply to everything. So if it's 10, to just give it some extra breathing room. But if you wanted to do a 1 story and then, even to the property line, if that's what you're permitted to do, and then have a terrace type thing set back for 10 feet and then build your 2nd story, you could do that, which generally has been pretty well received in communities. If that 2nd story isn't overlooking the neighboring yard, that tends to be pretty palatable.
Brought it up on Google Maps.
Oh, yeah, I might take a peek at it just so I can get a
Yeah,
visual, so
please
people
do.
have a visual control of it.
Yeah. I'm
We're
wondering
talking
if we did increase
Gladstone
the
Oaks.
setback
Yeah.
and then they could
And
come
the
before
apartments
us for a variant.
Exactly.
If they need to,
How do you-
based on,
I just want to make
their
sure
lot
that
size.
we don't
Yeah.
recreate that
I
same
wouldn't
problem.
wanna
It's right
pin
in their
someone down. They don't have
backyard.
that big of a lot.
And
And
it's
be like,
right in
oh,
the-
you know,
Okay.
but I think if
How
they're
do you guys
allowed to
feel
get
about that?
get the variance.
Agree, 100%.
Do you like that idea?
Yeah.
We could make it.
And I don't think we're discussing stopping them from being able
No.
to build this. We're discussing what we're allowing outright to not come before this body or
Correct.
have a full
Right.
decisioning process. So I do think we can still make room for these
Mhm.
buildings to happen.
So repeat what you just said, because I think it's perfect. Please, about maybe we do the setback to 10 feet. And if they want it to be 5, then they can come before us and we can look design review wise.
Yeah, so
do we
10
feel?
feet or new structures over 1 story or 12 feet in height or any portion thereof shall be set back a minimum of 10 feet from the property line adjacent to a property with a single story residential structure.
Yes.
And that would still potentially have some hotspots with 3 stories adjacent to 1 story with 10-foot setback is still not the greatest experience. So I don't know that we need it in here, but we could consider also providing a second tier of more than doubling story height to the adjacent property. Then the setback needs to be further. You need to use that tiering system.
Yeah, so if you are going over
Now, see,
2
I like that.
stories or 24 feet in height, maybe you need another 5 feet or another
Yeah.
10 feet.
At what point do we get in trouble over like over governing how people utilize their property? Because I worry if we start eating into, like, I'm all for obviously protecting single family and
Yeah.
single level, but if we start requiring 15 plus feet
Yeah.
of setback for, we're limiting their ability to build on their property.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that brings me back to, this one I didn't specifically put it in, but maybe this is another one where we should be talking about those larger properties, those
Yeah.
12 plus units or those half
yeah.
acre plus sites. Because if you have a smaller site and you build something tall, maybe we still have the 5 or maybe even like an 8, maybe for a smaller than a half an acre,
Yeah.
just to have something in there.
Yeah.
But if you're going to that larger development size, like that that complex is definitely more than a half acre
Oh, yeah.
site.
Oh, yeah.
And it's more than 12 units,
Mhm.
you can see there. So that would fall into this like larger governance piece. So maybe we do that. We do like a 5 or an 8 for those smaller units. And then once we're hitting that threshold, then we do 10 for the second story and like maybe another 5 for the third story, just so and if you want, you can make a straight building. You just pull the whole thing back 15.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah,
you can do the
At a
terrace.
certain point, if the lot's big enough, it's like 50 feet, but.
Yeah, yeah,
but,
yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to.
But we will always hit that 35-foot level. So we're never going to have like 4 stories bearing down on anyone.
Yeah.
Which is not true everywhere.
But you saw that picture. That's pretty funky, isn't it?
Yeah, it definitely,
I don't want that to happen again.
you definitely don't like to see that where the single family are built first and then that comes.
I don't think anybody wants to see that happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to make whatever, it's certain things like that, having been on the planning commission for a while, that
But
you don't want to see repeats of. And that was an unfortunate situation.
however, if it had like the first story and then there was like a tier
Yeah.
and then a second story and it might look kind of cool.
Still, the
Yeah,
perfect thing would have been just reverse it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, I think like Commissioner Langston said, it's hard to write that in, like whenever you're adjacent.
But that's why you have design reviews, because when you have a good planning commission, they'll look at that and go, yeah, that's not going to work so well. That's not going to be fair to the residents that are
The-
already there.
The problem is if it meets the code, you
Yeah.
can't make them change it.
Yeah.
So you'd have to look at it and say, we'd like you to change it. Like with ICSB, it was, we'd like you to put this setback in and the neighbor would like it. And they said, yeah, we can make that work.
Yep.
If they had said, no, go pound sand, it would have been like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
too bad, neighbor. So that's the thing, is even with a public hearing, you don't always get to have a lot of say.
Right,
over
if
it
it's
it
outright
meets the
permitted, I
code.
understand that.
Yeah.
But if we're updating some of what we've got written in our codes, that we should
Yeah,
keep in mind that this is where we can fine tune it
Yeah.
and be able to make sure that the future of the city looks good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
I have
And
a
this
silly
is,
question. This is like reminding me of something we talked about in one of my real estate classes a million years ago. But isn't there something like a right to sky or a right to light or something like that where a building that was built first, there's some legal, and I'm gonna have to look this up when I get home because
I
it's
know
been a
exactly
minute.
what you're talking about because it's like,
Mhm.
and I don't know that that was even considered for the homes that were already there, but you actually purchased that airspace above that doesn't allow.
Yeah, I
any
mean,
de-
certainly nothing could overhang your property. So I think that's where that is, but setbacks are the governing piece. So if we had a C2 property next to a residential property, or more likely, both zone C2, one with an existing single story, single family residential, that next door neighbor could build right up to the property line
Yeah.
right now, today,
Yeah,
in
see, and
C2.
I don't want that to be the case.
So now we're saying, well, okay, if you're gonna do that, we want some space between the two properties.
so
Um,
can we go back to this question about whether if we codify something that is constrictive to property owners, like what is the risk there? Because if it's codified, it was recommended by us, adopted by the city council. I think the risk mechanism is that people don't like the decision that the city council made and rebel against the city council, but I don't know that that opens us up to legal risk, or correct me if I'm wrong.
I agree with that. I think there's no changes to the uses you're allowed to do on your property, or even really to the intensity that you're able to build your property to. There have certainly been changes recently with parking and other things that allow more intense use of a property. So this doesn't rise to the level of needing to do like what we call a Measure 56 notice, where we have to let you know that we may have impacted the ability of your use of the site. Especially if we're putting those larger thresholds on it. So we're saying you're at over a half an acre and we're asking for 10 feet. If you're a smaller site and we're only asking for 5 feet, that's a reasonable thing. We have like a threshold that we're putting in place so that we're not over impacting a smaller lot or ability to develop. A 5-foot side setback is a pretty common side setback size. So on a smaller lot, that's not out of the realm of possibility, even in a commercially zoned property. I think it stands up.
Okay. Anything else, Jacob?
No, I'll look for it. If you think about things that we may want to discuss in the August meeting, I would be happy to see a couple versions of the copy for this specific section, with and without the half acre and 12 unit. We
Okay.
may decide to make some adjustments later on that, but
You had mentioned too something about 8 feet instead of 8 feet.
Oh,
Was that
going
for
up
the
to the
side
third.
setback?
Third floor. I think.
Yeah, just like and what your threshold is. So 5 foot, 8 foot, 10 foot, 12 foot, like whatever setback you decide to put into place. To me, it seems reasonable that at some level you're at a 5-foot setback, which is
Yeah.
similar to any single family
Correct.
lot. Also middle housing, all 5 foot. But then, once you get to a larger size property, but it sounds like maybe Commissioner Weiss would like to see it maybe even without that threshold.
yeah, because I think that threshold would not have cared for ICSB, and we still may have wanted to see that for a variance review instead of allowed outright.
So again, the house behind them is 2 stories. They just came out to the meeting. So it wouldn't even apply.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I'm
But-
with Commissioner Weiss. I'd like to see that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Great. So August, more work on the setback issue, just options for setbacks. And I can look at some other jurisdictions just from the, legality standpoint and what other cities do with this. Because we've definitely done especially in residential, we've done the setbacks, the tiered setback standard in Salem, I know for sure. I think some of the other cities we've worked into.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
It's always nice to know how we compare to other entities too, so
Mhm.
appreciate that effort.
Yeah. Let's see, and then so the next one is orient major service activity areas, for example, loading and delivery areas of the proposed project away from existing residences. I took that out because we already require you to be 20 feet away from residential property with a loading area. So we're already covered elsewhere in the code with more specific language, numerical language.
Do you want to reference where it's already at in the other codes to,
I don't think so. It
Okay.
applies equally to a design review.
okay,
I don't think it needs to be in this section.
So I guess I read these two things differently. Orient away means don't have your loading docks facing existing residents, and just moving 20 feet away is quite a bit less requirement than that.
But it is a numerical, clear and objective standard that we can apply. Otherwise, we need to replace this with something that's clear and objective.
I guess what's not clear and objective about C right now?
I orient major service activity areas away from the existing residences. I turned it 90 degrees. Now the truck comes in a different
Yeah,
angle. I'm oriented differently, but I'm right up next to the property line. You know, instead of I'm 20 feet away.
Okay.
I think, I don't know. I think orient is a subjective word.
So it's not the service activity that's subjective, it's the orientation that's subjective.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you wanted to have service activity area be fully objective, you just take out the EG, loading and delivery areas. So that's your loading zone, which you already have a whole section of your code about how you design a loading area. But if you want to have it be, you know, and then away from existing residences is subjective too. Like how far away? What is, if I put a fence
Yeah.
in between, does that count? You know, so if we wanted to have something in this section and rewrite it, we need to just make it specific to loading delivery areas and then talk about specifically say what it means to orient it away from an existing residence.
Yeah, I really don't have any developed thought around this. They're not quite exactly the same. And I'm picturing we've got the loading zone across the street. If this were a row of houses here, that would be facing this. I don't know if it would be better if they were exiting to Portland Avenue because they oriented away from the residential here. But they'd be facing residential over there. So then would that make them not able to have a loading area?
Yeah, it might completely preclude them.
Yeah.
Then you are taking away their
Yeah.
use of their
Yeah.
light industrially zoned property. Yeah.
Okay. And I'm open to any feedback on this. I really don't have any developed thought on it. We could also bulk out 17.4a.0403D to be more thoughtful if we are replacing it. I mean, if we're backfilling, removing C with.
Yeah, and I just quoted the portion that spaces it from the residential area. You do have to screen it also, buffer and screen it per 17.48040. There's either landscaped or, you know, wall or
Yeah.
fence screening required.
I
Too.
think for me, that's the biggest thing. It's just as long as it's screened, you know,
Yeah.
that makes a huge difference.
Interestingly, this 20-foot thing has come up twice.
Yeah.
Wong's Building Supply needed, I think, a variance to do their loading area where the Pizza Hut already had sort of a loading area, but it's within 20 feet of the properties that are north of the site and in the rear. And then again today on the Kia application, interestingly, the property behind Kia is zoned residential. It's in the county and it's owned by Toyota, but it's still a residential property.
Yep. Isn't that weird?
I know. So they were showing their loading area a little closer than 20 feet. And we just have to demonstrate that it's 20 feet and it's already screened back there and things. But I was like, I know this is gonna sound strange because the property behind you is owned by Toyota, but this is the standard. And Toyota could always sell that property and it
Yeah.
could be developed with
Mhm.
apartments or something. So we want to make sure that we follow our rules for that too. So just a side note, that has come up a few times, that 20-foot spacing.
I
Um,
do think I like that 20-foot comment because it states that loading facilities shall be located at least 20 feet.
It's very clear.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's very easy to measure on a plan and say you've got 20 feet. And then, like I said, it also says further on, it has to be screened, and buffered. More on that, or?
When you say screen, you mean like a fence or something
Yeah,
designating
I
that
can
it's?
tell you what it
Okay.
reads, and this isn't in your packet because I didn't make any changes
an
to this
awesome question,
section, but let
yeah.
me pull it
What?
up.
What exactly is
Yeah, what
screening?
does
Yeah.
screening?
It says for loading,
I mean, I can assume, but one, of
yeah,
course, you know all this stuff already. So does
just
Jennifer.
gotta find it. Bear with me since I didn't.
In other words, you're
prepare this
supposed to kind of try
section.
to hide it.
Yeah, or kind of buffer,
Yeah.
you know, the
So
sound.
that could
and
mean
activity and
fence,
the movement.
wall,
Yeah.
Special paneling.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Which is essentially a fence.
trees.
Yeah. Bushes, landscape.
So it reads, off-street parking and loading areas shall be screened from abutting properties located in a residential zoning district unless such abutting properties are developed with non-residential uses. Required screening shall be accomplished by building placement, a landscaped earth berm, or a site obscuring fence or hedge.
Okay.
Required screening shall be a minimum of 6 feet high and shall not conflict with the clear vision standards.
Okay.
So it's pretty clear,
Yeah.
right? It's easy for me to say, yep, it's there, or
Well,
it's
even-
not.
And also too, even in that, it says orientated a certain way too. So we're still getting the old language of orient. I'm just saying that kind of what you were questioning, they are suggesting to make sure that
Oh, yes.
that area isn't nearer. If you can,
Right.
if you can help it. not
Yeah,
have
that
to
one
be-
of the options is building placement. So
Yeah.
saying it's on the whole other side of the building from the
Correct, yeah.
residential. Yeah. That is one of the options they
Good
give.
call.
I just had a thought. I understand now why when you look at a funeral home, they either have where they unload the hearse in a very secluded area so it can't be seen.
Mm.
And yeah, no, but because there are some funeral homes that are in residential areas.
I would definitely consider that a loading
Yeah.
facility. In fact, just pull it in.
But what I'm saying
Just
is it
pull it
made
all the
me,
way
made me
in before
think
you-
like the one in Oregon City, they go down a driveway and it's
Yeah.
secluded and that's where they pull into. So
Right, right.
yeah. So it's not seen. So,
Yes.
okay.
It's very polite of them. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's very polite of them.
Yes.
Well, it's not something you want neighbors to be looking at. Oh yeah, there's the death house right over there.
Okay, so more on that. I know we have more to talk about on that at our next meeting as far as setbacks and things.
Okay.
So the next section is screening. We require opaque enclosures and gates for all refuge storage areas. Screen mechanical equipment except solar collection apparatus. You don't have to screen your solar panels where they can't collect sun. That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Or, oh, this shouldn't be an or. I'm sorry, for this one, it doesn't make sense. They should provide opaque enclosures around storage areas, refuse. They should screen their mechanical equipment and they should buffer and screen as needed. So here we say a minimum 6 foot high site obscuring fence or hedge is required between industrial uses and adjacent commercial, institutional, or residential uses. So we used to say special consideration will be given to buffering, screening, and siting of commercial and industrial uses to ensure that noise and odors are not detected. We do have noise and odor municipal code standards that apply to everything in the city. So we typically don't need to address those in the development code.
Okay.
Oh, and then we reference the noise. Yeah. Okay, building materials. So this is the metal conversation. So currently we say buildings shall be constructed using high image exterior materials and finishes such as masonry, architecturally treated tilt-up concrete, glass, wood, or stucco. And then suggested language is an applicant may request a hearing before the planning commission to propose a structure that does not comply with this standard. So if you don't comply with the standards of this section, you could just request to come straight to planning commission. Maybe that sentence needs to come first because then buildings shall not be constructed with metal siding material except for, and we currently allow canopies, awnings, screening for roof mounted fixtures or other architectural features, utility equipment cabinets, structures no greater than 200 square feet and 10 feet in height, building or portions of buildings not visible from a road or adjacent property, and then recommending the addition of architectural metal panels on no more than 50% of a building or the portion of the building visible from a road or adjacent property.
We talked about this.
Mhm.
We were trying to figure out what the name of some of the metal architectural paneling, metal paneling. Did you look that? Because I
Yeah,
know,
so ACM is a commonly used
Yeah.
term.
okay,
And I think that stands for, I can't remember now. So maybe we should put that in specifically.
yeah,
Um,
I think we should, because there's some that, my goodness, I know that in the time I've served on here, there were 2 times that, like, for Seventh-day Adventist, they built a structure and they wanted to use that metal, architectural metal paneling, and they brought samples,
yeah,
and it was wonderful.
yeah.
Yeah,
it's
it looked
really-
nice, it felt nice, it looked like a quality product. There was foam insulation on the back of it.
Yeah, aluminum composite material, ACM.
Okay,
There are, I don't know for sure, but I think there could be other high finish architectural metals. But if we want it to just be like it has ACM or it goes to planning commission or it meets one of these other thresholds, I'm fine with that. I just want to make sure that there's some level that's easy for me to look at it. I'm looking for a number too, in addition to the material. So if we want to say ACM on no more than 50% of it, the car dealership I saw today, it's really just using ACM along the top where the Kia sign will be.
Okay.
And then it's going to look like glass, but there'll be like metal, cross panes basically in the glass at certain intervals. It'll look great.
metal structural supporting.
Yeah,
The glass
yeah.
panels, yeah.
Which would fall in the
Looks industrial, but it looks.
the
nice.
architectural features, and probably even what they're proposing on the top is canopy awning, or architectural feature. So they'll probably fall into this category anyway. But yeah, so if we want to say what was that again? Aluminum composite materials, ACM specifically. Is that, I
How does
guess,
everyone feel
Commissioner
about that?
Volbada, as far as you know, does that cover most of the
Yeah, I
architectural
was-
metal?
Yeah.
How do you guys feel about it? Joe?
I have mixed feelings about metal. Just because I mean, in a commercial setting, I guess it's not a big deal, but I feel like downtown kind of has like a historical vibe to it,
Yeah.
and I'm not sure that ACM is really compatible with
That's a
the
good point.
core downtown area.
That is a good point.
That is a good point. That's why I love this commission.
Should
Everybody's-
we just be
insight.
considering that
Just gets
in
me
the
excited.
C3 zoning districts, which is McLaughlin,
Mhm.
and then I think that
That'd be like 82nd too.
it would be 82nd, a
Okay.
little bit of town center, but in the more general
Newer
commercial
area.
portions.
It's
Yeah, I
not
mean,
the-
C3 is general commercial, C2 is central commercial,
It's
so
not the downtown core overlay.
it
or is that
it
the
is
same thing?
not. So the downtown core overlay will only be the C2 zone properties in the town center. So C3 doesn't have anything specific to it, so this would apply to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we would still leave in the canopies, awning, screenings, architectural features. The thing I'm wondering is the architectural features that's not super clear and concise, because if they could claim,
Yeah.
up to 50% are, you know, if it's not the main building, 49%, right?
Yeah,
It's not the main building material,
right.
which
There should have
I
some
don't have any
numerical
quarrels with.
limit.
I think
So-
ACM panels are beautiful. I've seen them done really well.
Yeah, I have too.
Are there any cheap looking ACM
Oh,
materials?
Yeah.
You could get really cheap bad stuff.
Look like a metal warehouse, yeah.
I'll be curious to see.
Well, now, out of the campus,
Yeah.
out of the Nike campus, didn't they use a lot of ACM?
Yeah.
That's what I thought. And some of those buildings are absolutely gorgeous.
The Serena building is.
Yeah.
We
Or-
put a
How would we
material,
set
it
those
was a
in?
soffit though, underneath a patio, and it was like wood, and like from far away, it literally looked like wood.
Yeah.
I'm curious what Selwood does in their code to call out ACM panels, because when I think about driving down there or even Milwaukee downtown,
Yeah.
you know, because I think both of those have really beautifully done downtown corridors. I'm curious what their requirements are as far as metal on buildings.
Let me see.
That's
Oh,
an excellent, you're talking
Yeah.
about like, down on Milwaukee Avenue? Yeah, I hear what you're saying, because there is new and old blended.
In Milwaukee, the city just opened they just redid their city hall too.
Yeah, it's
Mhm.
like
Which, and it looks a little more modern, but it also kept.
there's a restaurant there now.
Frame Brewery.
Yeah, and a really good
Actually.
coffee shop.
I was down there over the weekend. I'm like, what's
It's
going
pretty
on
good.
there?
Out of Hood River, yeah.
Okay.
And Keeper Coffee, great coffee
Mhm.
shop.
It's so good.
I don't see it in the doc I pulled up, but I just pulled up the Milwaukee Downtown Design Guidelines, but that was just a PowerPoint. So I can look into that for
Okay.
next time too. So Milwaukee and Selwood. So Selwood is City of Portland, but I wonder if they have a design district. I'll look that up.
Because not only that, if you go down Southeast Division Street,
Mhm.
you have mix of old
Yeah.
restored buildings and
Yeah.
aluminum metal buildings. That's still, yeah, City of Portland, but
Yeah. they-
Yeah.
they've
But they
even done
do-
that on Alberta Street.
Yeah, they do design overlays in some of those districts in Portland. So I'll take a look.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I
For
did
that matter,
hear,
Oregon City, because they redid their downtown. I don't see a lot of modern. They kept a lot of the historic stuff going on their main street.
Yes.
Still looks fabulous though.
I did hear though, there's a way to do this poorly, and we're talking about what we want to allow outright without
Right.
a review point. So do we need to, are we considering these other verbiages to maybe tighten it and make sure we're only getting the top level of ACM?
Yeah, I mean, I think with the question about what happens in the C2 zonings, that's more similar to your downtown or your design overlays. But then in your C3, that's your McLaughlin
Industrial.
Boulevard, more, excuse me, the auto dealerships and that sort of thing. So that one might be more appropriate to be a higher level, the 50%. Whereas, you know, I think what Commissioner Volbada I heard saying is like, this canopy awning, screenings for roof-mounted equipment or other architectural features should have some sort of limit too. And maybe it's 10% or something really kind of small, because if it's going to apply generally and in the old town area or the downtown area, maybe we want to make sure that that's pretty limited, and then just have the ACM allowed in the C3 zone, so not in the C2 zone. But if they want it in the C2 zone, they come to this body.
Yeah.
And get approval.
I did have a question about the applicant may request a hearing before the planning commission to propose a structure that does not comply with this standard. They're not saving anything on the design review application by having it a staff level decision instead of in front of the planning commission, correct?
We did not change the fees. Typically, well, we are in the process of reviewing land use fees right now, but because there won't be a staff report associated with that, I'm not proposing that we increase our fees, which we might typically do on an annual basis. So no, it would be the same cost for design review.
And then for this section where we're referring to may request a hearing, would there be an additional cost for that? Or would that be considered part of the
I
application?
think that'd be just considered part of your design review application.
Cool.
Yeah,
That's good for me.
I don't think it would cost more
Yeah.
money to do that.
I don't want additional barriers to be able to
Yeah.
do
yeah,
these
yeah.
things.
I mean, the
that they would-
timing would be a little longer, but
Cool.
No, I don't think we'd add a new line item in the fee schedule or anything for that. Now, if they needed a variance, that does have its own fee and that comes separately.
And there is a fee for that.
There is a fee, yeah.
Do you know what that is?
Sure, it's,
I'm just curious.
Yeah.
I knew there was a fee associated when you do rezoning, but
But we would not be requesting a proposal of a structure that does not comply with this standard to be a variance.
right.
We would consider that a proposal before the planning
Yeah,
commission.
that they're just requesting. In the way that chapter 1794 hearings is written, you can also request a hearing of any staff level decision. So if someone came in and was like, I don't think you're gonna do a good job, I really want to go to the planning commission, they could. They have that ability already in the code.
I can't imagine anyone doing that.
Well. Okay,
These
opening the
days.
fee schedule. I don't have any beef with anyone in the land anywhere, but definitely not in the land use community. So, let's see. It's sideways. The variance is $1,120.
Okay. Thank you.
And a adjustment, which should be up to 20%, is 560. So half of that. The staff level.
Okay.
Okay. So more to come on architectural panels, more homework for me on looking at other standards. Yeah, perfect. Lighting. So we previously had some information about requiring a lighting plan. Now we're still requiring that. And it used to say, show us all these areas, but let's just see the whole site. all on-site exterior lighting shall be, a master plan for on-site lighting shall include design, height, and location of all proposed exterior lights, including all proposed site lighting. That's pretty redundant. Maybe I will wordsmith that a little bit, but I don't think we need to list out exactly which lights you show because we want to see all of them. Here we added that an average of at least 2-foot candles across the site, minimum level of 1-foot candle, maximum level of 4 anywhere on the site, and then maximum level of 1-foot candle at the property line. So that's trying to make sure that we're not bleeding off the site. And I thought I put a requirement for shielding in here. Did I miss it? Oh, yes, it's on, it
yeah.
shall be shielded and directed downward. Okay.
It's probably just me
Mhm.
because I'm old. I had a hard time reading the text in the blue shaded.
Oh, okay. It's
Did
not-
anybody else have a hard time?
Yeah, it's.
I
kinda-
did
you
as
gotta
well.
look at it,
Yeah.
Oh,
very
yeah.
difficult.
Okay, I will change the way the text looks. Does it print out? Oh, yeah. The printing is much darker.
I'm not trying to be critical. I'm sorry. I
No.
just I had a problem reading.
I will change it.
Like-
If you want to know the honest truth, I'm a beaver and so I can't do green and yellow. So I'll choose a different color palette. So I don't highlight in green when I highlight in yellow.
Maybe an orange.
Maybe I'll look at what's considered high contrast and get you something different. We all have our quirks, right?
Yep,
They
yep.
lost in the baseball
I know. I said about
today,
that.
but it was a great end of the game.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
I'm okay.
And don't
Um,
worry, I won't tell Jackie what you just said.
She knows. She knows.
Told who? What now?
Okay.
So,
Our city administrator. She's a duck.
Yeah, she's
she's a duck? Okay.
crusher. I have to listen. The fall is almost, unbearable around here because Chief Schmerber and City Administrator Betts talk about Ducks games for the first 10 minutes of every meeting. And yeah, that's a total side note. Change to high contrast.
thank you. I'm sorry. I
Highlighting.
wasn't trying to be critical. I just
No, that is much
struggled reading it.
different. The printed looks a lot different. My screen, it's like a nice light blue.
Yeah.
highlighting And dark blue, so yeah.
it's too dark. Okay.
Okay. So lighting, any questions or thoughts about lighting? Okay,
No, I
captured
think
it.
you've got that one covered pretty tightly
Okay, great.
because we're requiring shielding and timers and all that stuff, correct? Okay.
allowing timers, yeah,
Okay.
not allowing, yeah, thank you. I was like, you guys came up with the wording and I verified it and put it in. So no changes proposed to the equipment and facilities, trash and disposal, recycling collection. I don't ever have anyone say that this is a difficult threshold to meet. It's very numerical, or you can just get a letter from the hauler. So it's very easy to meet
Yeah.
that standard, but make sure that it works. Temporary structures, we rarely get those. Don't really work with those too much. Multifamily design standards, they're pretty straightforward. No recommended changes there. Non-residential standards, here's where we already have window requirements for non-residential buildings. Again, this is really only going to come into play in your C3 zones because your C2 is all covered by the downtown overlay, which is more restrictive, requires more.
Okay.
And that's it for building, siting, and design. So rolling forward to page 3.9, we look at landscaping standards. We say that a minimum of 15% of the lot area, which I think is a great standard. It tends to be applicants can meet it with not a lot of difficulty, but that it gives a nice amount of landscaping on the site. So now we're just going to say that landscaping has to include native drought tolerant plant species, which is pretty industry accepted language. Yeah. We require landscaping around the parking and loading areas. That's all numerical. That's great. On the next page on irrigation, high efficiency irrigation is required for all required landscaping. So anywhere we're making you put in landscaping. If you want to have like a big field that you don't irrigate that's on your site that's not required, I guess that's your choice. But if we require the landscaping, you need to irrigate it. So here we used to have plant species and we talked about trees under power wires, and then we talked about street trees further down. And so it's unusual to have trees under power lines that aren't street trees, but just in case I tried to combine these. So street trees and on-site trees within 10 feet of sidewalks or overhead utilities shall be chosen from the Clackamas County approved street tree list as appropriate for planter strip width, presence or lack of overhead power lines, and canopy width at maturity. Those are the thresholds that are in the Clackamas County street tree list. So if you have a 5-foot planter strip, we don't want you to choose a tree that thrives in a 10-foot wide space. Yeah. So we don't need that street tree section below. We'll renumber. That's pretty much it on landscaping. That's all pretty straightforward already. And if your site is not meeting, which we have had, I think at least one auto dealership that didn't meet before, there's thresholds for how far into compliance you come with the next development of your site. And that was used, I think, on the Mazda site maybe. And that was,
I think you're correct.
yeah, so bringing them further into compliance, but not requiring them to completely redo their whole site.
Yeah, they had to add more landscaping.
yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, so that's a great standard and easy to apply.
Does anyone know the logic for using sod on McLaughlin Boulevard instead of street trees?
Yeah, so ODOT won't allow street trees.
Yeah.
They require it to be sod. It's an ODOT standard. So we don't have any jurisdiction over the ODOT right of way.
So should we harden up the use of sod along McLaughlin Boulevard shall be encouraged in landscape plans for development of McLaughlin Boulevard, or should that be required?
Yeah, you're right. We could make that more clear because we're encouraging rather than requiring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is required.
Maybe refer to the ODOT standard
That's
also.
what I was just gonna
Yeah.
say. How
Yeah.
about we say required,
Perfect.
sod is required unless otherwise complying with an ODOT standard.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good catch.
Yes, thank you. Please do catch those because we'll just have to do it more and more the more we find them as we go along. And sometimes I read through it and then I bull and miss it. I do try to have some other planners in my office look over it sometimes, but if they're not used to the code, they're not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
when you have 7 of us, you get all different perspectives,
great.
input and insights, and I love it.
Yeah.
If we made our own street tree list, would that be the facilities department that would?
Yeah, so Public Works would do that. But we just became a tree city and we refer to Clackamas County's
Yeah,
tree list
yeah.
in that way. So they, I think,
Should
are very
we add that
happy.
list into this?
Well, we just referenced it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Okay.
we shouldn't put the list in because it could change.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So
yeah.
we want to just reference it and allow it to organically change as
It could be
things change.
Kind of a long.
All right.
And
Yeah.
I would say based off administrative burden, deferring to the Clackamas list is more upkeepable.
Yeah, and they
Sustainable.
have, you know,
Upkeepable. I like that. Is that a
Yeah.
word?
upkeepable.
Upkeepable. No, I do. I like
You got it.
upkeep.
And they have, you know, urban forestry
Yeah.
staff members and
Yeah.
things that we should rely on
Yeah.
because we don't have that on staff.
They have the real pros.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So then we move into our standard design review language, which doesn't have a whole lot of standards in it, just basically says when you're required to go through a design review. And here's where I was suggesting, and we're on page 314. Well, I guess start on page 313 because this is the list of things that are exempt. So it says, actually it's 312. Applicability, this chapter shall apply to new structures, additions to existing structures, site development such as grading, parking lot construction, or commercial industrial use of an undeveloped property, change of use, and major remodeling with the following exceptions. So then we have this list of things that don't require design review. And it includes playground equipment, fabric covered awnings. If you're changing the use, but you're not changing from like residential to commercial or commercial to industrial, if you're staying within your use category that you don't need to have a design review. Then I was recommending that we add a small building or site addition, less than 250 square feet, not visible from streets, sidewalks, or public parks. So this is something in the back area of a commercial lot or something, like
A shed.
yeah, or you know, and the Public Works picnic canopy,
Yeah.
I'm actually not sure if that's visible from the street or not, because it's kind of in between, but if it weren't, then it wouldn't need design review
Okay.
per this standard. And
We
then
did review that though.
we did because it's not exempt now.
Okay.
Yeah, but I felt like it was like very much a rubber stamp
Yeah.
to just do that. They had just finished their whole project and then they wanted to add that. And I guess that's the thing too, like occasionally a project will get done and it'll be like, oh dang, why didn't we
Yeah.
think about that small thing that we really want to do and we have a little extra money, or we were really successful and we just need this tiny little thing. So I was recommending to add that, and then the parks, allowing improvements to parks that are already part of an approved site plan. So several of our parks have approved site plans like Meldrum Bar and the Nature Park. And so if something's already in that plan to be put forward, then we can not require them to go through the design review because we know the city knows that they're going to do that. City's the applicant, so we know they'll follow the rules. Those are my only two, because we don't have any county parks or any other park jurisdiction that would come in.
Okay.
Any thoughts about that? Okay. All right, so we can cruise ahead to 317. We don't have any clear approval standards in here. So just saying like, when can we approve a design review? When you've met all the standards of Division 4, which are the standards we've basically already talked about, and that your conditions of approval shall include that 8-foot public utility easement unless a setback precludes that, you know, like on Portland Avenue or in C2 where we say your building must be within 5 feet of the front property line. We don't, you know, if you pull all the way up to the sidewalk and you're permitted to do that, we don't need a public utility easement. And then we're going to want that construction management plan submitted prior to building and public improvement plan approval. And again, that I'm leaving that sort of a little nebulous construction management plan because we'll have a clear checklist for a construction management plan from the policy side. So it's mostly going to be Public Works probably overseeing that. So I'll work with them to come up with what do we want to see in a construction management plan, hours of operation, signage, what streets are closing when, how long it's going to operate, that sort of stuff, how you're going to notify neighbors.
Yeah.
Those
Nuance question.
Yeah.
Does that need to be capitalized as a title?
Construction management plan.
Yep.
Sure.
just so that it makes reference that there
Yeah.
is an actual.
Yes.
I also had a nuanced question.
Yeah.
I have not looked at any adjacent code for approvals, but a design review shall be approved when, one, the applicable standards of GMC Division 4 development standards are found to be met or are conditioned upon approval. Is found to be met that they have to wait for findings from the city first, right?
Yeah.
Not just meeting them without an acknowledgement of meeting them.
Yeah. So the findings are in that staff report notice of decision.
Okay.
So
So found to be met is
the,
sufficient.
yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Yep. Or, but could we say met? Are met or are conditioned upon approval? I could happily remove found to be.
Yeah,
That is,
I think Met's enough.
yeah.
I guess my concern with this is not the found to be met or met. It's the that they need some sort of
Process.
recognition that
Oh,
they've
yeah.
been found.
Well, I think if they're submitting a design review approval, then the language that's in there is what we're using to say, yep, you met these standards, so we can give you this approval. So I think what I'm hearing you say is you don't want someone to be like, oh, I did all that, so I'm good,
Yeah.
without even submitting.
Yeah.
So could it be more clear that you've submitted? A design review shall be approved when, well, I guess I feel pretty comfortable that we've said when you have to submit a design review. So how about we say a design review application shall be met,
There we go.
shall be approved when,
Yeah.
and then say
Yeah,
met. Okay.
Thank you.
Mhm.
the clearer the better.
We want regular people to be able to build.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not every applicant has
Yeah.
the experience we have or knows the codes. So it needs to be, needs to somewhat be in layman's terms that are easy to understand.
Okay.
Thank you.
Speaking
Clear and
of-
concise. I like that.
Speaking of layman's terms, has the city ever considered form-based code?
I don't know, because I've only been here 2.5 years, but cities, it was really hot in the early aughts form-based code. So taking away like what zoning is next to each other and more like how uses interact with one another. But it hasn't been hugely successful. So most cities that have it haven't stuck with it in the truest sense of it.
Okay.
And what
But
you
it,
do-
yeah,
ahead.
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, you guys go ahead.
I was just curious. I've never heard of that before.
It's just something that I kind of looked at. I felt it was easier to understand.
Okay.
Yeah. let
Are
me
there any
pull up-
municipalities that actually use it?
Yeah, in parts, let me pull up a definition. So
Okay.
a land use, form-based code is a land development regulation that fosters predictable built results and high quality public realm by using physical form rather than separation of uses as the organizing principle for the code. A form-based code is a regulation, not a mere guideline. A form-based code offers a powerful alternative to conventional zoning regulation. So instead of saying like residential zoning here, commercial zoning here, industrial zoning here, you're not so much worried about how the uses are mixing, but more how what they're building on the site interacts with the other site.
Okay.
But again, well, let's see. Let's just
I mean,
see
never heard-
Isn't that
cities
what we're
that use
talking about?
form-based code.
Should be like, you have a bunch of homes and someone purchased a property and they're like, oh, I want to put a convenience store, and you're like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. as long as it's-
Instead of like, nope, you're not zoned for that. Yeah.
I like that. Joe.
So in the downtown of North Bend, Washington, they use a form-based code. That was the first hit that came up besides like, what is a form-based code? But I've typed in cities that use form-based
So-
code.
Chair, if you could get the funding for us to take a field trip to North Bend, Washington.
Yeah.
We want to see how this works.
I heard that the things are changing. You can't even have a meal anymore. So I think a trip to North Bend is probably out of the realm for you. Sorry.
Okay.
I think
So
what
I'm assuming that no municipality in Oregon uses this.
I mean, I don't know of any, but I could ask
Okay.
around. I could ask the Hive about that. I don't know that that's true. There could be cities in Oregon that
I
are.
think the document that I read was from the Chicago Metropolitan Planning Council.
Okay,
Okay,
yeah.
so it's an East Coast thing.
Not necessarily. I mean, North Bend.
It kind of does.
But yeah, it's definitely something that we, when we go to planning conferences, for a long time, there were a lot of sessions about it and it's exciting. But I think most planners got back to their codes the way they're written and we're like, sure, if we have like 3 years and like, a long range planner whose job it is to just rewrite the code, you could probably do it. But I think cities on limited staffing and budgets just felt too overwhelmed.
what they
to redo the
currently
whole
have,
system.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
But Chicago probably has a lot of resources for it, right? And can do that. And then, like I was saying, North Bend, Washington, it's their downtown only. So maybe it'd be like something like, we love this idea. Let's just do it in our town center or something, like let's take it on. But yeah, it's not something I've ever worked on. I've never written one or.
Well, I wonder how that would work with like not coming here, everything would go through design review. And so like that would put so much more like work on your guys's plate too, of like making sure, what form, what takes, would it adhere to what, yeah. Anyway, that sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah, that's a really good point about Oregon and clear and objective. Like, is there a way to, and there probably is a way to write it clearly and objectively. Yeah. It's a really interesting thought. I wonder if the state has funded it anywhere, where they've said, we're going to go in and do like, sometimes they do little pilot projects just to see how it works. I'll look at that.
okay.
Okay. Getting back to 318, we used to have this minor exceptions, but we talked about the fact that if you wanted to get an adjustment and wanted to make the case for that, you could up to 20%. And then anything above that would be a variance that would come before the planning commission. I don't want to be making subjective decisions about little adjustments here and there without like a full adjustment review criteria. Whereas I felt like it did make sense for this body to be able to do that and have people be innovative and things, but they'll still be able to come to this body if they need to do that. Compliance 2 years is really typical for construction to begin. I keep a list of when projects are hitting their 2 a year. Wong's is very close. They were approved in June of 2023. But they've now submitted their permits and are they've demolished the building. They've made progress and are starting to do construction on the site. So we're good there. The next one is the fire restoration building across the street here. That's in December of this year that hits the 2 year mark. So September or so, I'll reach out to them and remind them that they're expiring. If they decide they need another year, there's a place in the code where they can apply for that and get that granted by you, the planning commission. Interestingly, generally you would approve those if no major changes have happened in the code. We are changing the design review, but you can still make the case that they're generally in compliance with what the changes would be. Hopefully they just move forward.
I'm not remembering what it is they're wanting to do.
That structure.
That's right. But that's for their warehouse right across the
Right
street.
across
Yeah.
the street. Yeah.
Not their place of business on.
No, that place is separate. They haven't submitted any kind of permits or
Okay.
building permits or any kind of right-of-way permits yet for that. So
Okay.
I wonder if they got busy doing other things. So then we go on to the hearing section. I've referenced 1794 a couple of times tonight. There's good information there about how we do public notices, how we do, and even though it's called hearings, it also includes the type 1 and 2, so what we call administrative and then limited land use decisions. So if we scroll forward to 3-25,
Yeah.
City administrator decisions, these are the ones that are basically just a letter from the city administrator. So, or no, excuse me. These are subject to their own type of review. So middle housing land division, home occupation, that's a letter that comes from administration, water quality permits, habitat. So these are all pretty simple checks to make sure that everything's in compliance. I haven't had a billboard in the time I've been here, so I was actually just talking about that yesterday. Just thinking about like growing up in Las Vegas, there were billboards everywhere, you know, and they stick in my mind from my
Oops, sorry.
childhood. And I was telling my kids, like, you guys don't know what it's like to grow up where there's like a lot of billboards.
Yeah.
But then I thought, well, Gladstone has a couple,
Yeah.
like, you know, but anyway, it's total sidebar.
You could debate with us whether a vehicle is a billboard or a sign.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, fair. Gotcha. Hopefully I don't have to debate with anyone about that. But this is a new section, not new, it's already been there, but we're calling it limited land use decisions to comply with the way the ORS is written. And there's very specific ways to send public notice for that. So in the Oregon revised statute, the language is that a limited land use decision is a design review or a site plan, which we don't have site plan here in the city. If we did, we'd add it to this list. Lot line adjustment, partition, subdivision, replat, extension, expansion, or alteration of non-conforming use. And then here again, we say an applicant may request the application be heard directly by the planning commission. That language is already in there for that section too. Written notice, we talk about a 14-day written notice, which we've just done for the nature park trail loop. And what's required to be in the notice. So most of this language comes straight out of the Oregon revised statute to make sure we're just like 100% complying with that. And then we get to planning commission decisions. So you will still, yeah. Question on
Just on 17940553, I just was curious on the mechanism for a notice shall be provided to affected agencies, recognized neighborhood or community organizations whose boundaries include the subject property. I don't know.
We don't have them here, but that is the ORS language. If we did have them develop at some point, then we would be required by state law to notify them.
Okay, so we may want to consider adding language for recognized community organizations into the code, because I know we do have neighborhood groups that have advocated before this board in the past.
And homeowner associations.
Yeah, so homeowners associations are totally different. They're like a private entity that governs the shared resources of that area. They're not considered neighborhood associations, but are there neighborhood groups like established here?
There's two of them that have come before the planning commission. One when I can't think of the name of it right now.
That property over there, they created a group. I mean, when they were trying to build the apartment complex.
Yes, down where there's the Olson wetlands.
There was a group that formed.
They formed a group and there was
But I
another.
don't know if they meet regularly.
Well, I wonder if they're recognized,
Oh.
you know, because that's what the ORS is. It's like a.
When you say
formal
recognized, do they have to
neighborhood
file with the state of Oregon?
Yeah,
They do.
I believe so.
They don't just come together to fight something.
Yeah.
Well, there's
That
been two
sounds
that have
good.
come to fight over
Yeah.
certain things here.
Yeah, let me see if I can look up what a
Well, yeah, I
recognized.
know.
Wouldn't it be
back
like a
then,
Friends of
it's been a long
Frogs?
time. I haven't seen.
Friend of what?
Friends of Frogs is a pretty well known. I feel like I know it. I'm sure you know them very well. I do too.
I love it. Can't mess with their habitat.
But I think that would be an example of a recognized agency.
Yeah.
But if there's not a state jurisdiction for recognized, then we either need it in our own code, how a group could become recognized, or we should probably strike that.
Yeah, I think it's a
I agree
city,
with
I think
that.
it's a
Yeah,
city
I agree
level
too.
recognition, but I don't think we have it, right? We don't have a,
Not that I'm aware of,
yeah.
nothing that I'm aware of. no.
We could strike it. The only caution would be if we decided to add it in the future, we'd want to make sure we added it to comply with the ORS, but that's probably pretty unlikely.
Is, do Do they have it clearly stated out, the ORS regarding
This is
groups?
exactly the way the ORS reads.
Mhm.
Okay,
Written notice of the app, this whole section is verbatim out of the
Verbatim.
But
ORS.
they don't have another section that talks about,
What a
Yeah,
recognized.
Yeah.
what recognized is.
No, and I just typed, just searching recognized neighborhood organizations in Oregon, and it's city by city.
Mhm.
These are the neighborhood associations in Portland. These are the neighborhood associations in
And
Eugene. These are-
Milwaukee has some pretty established
Mhm.
ones.
and you may say the groups that have been before planning commission and before city council and have spoken to city council on behalf of a group of people were recognized by city council at that moment. So I would say that if you develop and this is a requirement of your development and you're not doing that thing that you committed to doing, then
Yeah.
you're setting yourself up for liability.
Yeah, the other thing is this is in addition to individual public notice, so they would have to have a separate PO box or something that they use as an organization to send to that we have record of.
Yeah.
So that's another way.
and I
you could
think that
say-
did occur with that one group. I think the city sent. I
I
don't,
have to go back and look at
look,
that.
yeah, I know. I don't have a,
I
they were pretty official. They were very organized.
yeah,
I haven't heard any recent.
I think they
activity
formed
out of it.
just for that case.
That group is still active and I still get emails in threads of them. So
All right.
Oh, you do, you
Yeah.
are?
I haven't seen anything. in
Okay. Do you live
forever.
down by there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
yeah. So
Casey Cutting owned that property.
yeah, I live next door.
Yeah.
Oh my God. How am I remembering this stuff tonight? This is freaking me out.
I remember that too.
Huh?
And I remember that too.
Yeah, I'm just remembering so much stuff.
So if we could leave in affected agencies because we do an agency, we do an agency notice for every land use application that comes across. But then we can acknowledge that we as a city don't have a recognized neighborhood or community organization that we would need to notify. So we can remove that part and then just rely on the fact that the public notice that goes out, if there's a neighboring property owner and they are part of that group, that they'll spread the word, but they're not a recognized group. Okay, that makes sense.
Tammy, would that be in our charter about recognized neighborhood organizations?
I don't, I don't know of anything off the top of my head. I'd have to
Yeah.
review that.
Okay, thank you.
We can do that.
But if it pertained to land use, it should be in chapter 17, right?
Well, not if it's the because like the formation of the planning commission is not, right? And if it's the formation of groups, not necessarily.
That makes sense.
But I'm just pulling up, I'm just gonna pull up the whole.
I do agree with you though, Jacob. If there's a procedure, we should say something like see state of Oregon, whatever.
Yeah, it should at
Where
least
it
be
clearly
defined.
defines what the
Mhm.
requirements are. Or if it's on a city to city basis, then we need to have something
Yeah.
in our city charter.
Yeah, I'm not advocating for either. I'm just saying if we reference it here, it should be somewhere else or we don't reference.
No, I like
it.
the idea. It should be clearly stated, clear and concise.
Yeah, I'm just.
But
looking at-
hypothetically, our language could exceed the ORS too, couldn't it?
It definitely can. You can make your distance further that you notify for. You can make your I don't think you can make your time longer, but you can notify as many people as you want. Yeah.
Okay.
We do not have, so this search for the Gladstone Municipal Code includes the charter and the municipal code, and it doesn't pull up anything for recognized, for neighborhood and organization. They're separate, but they pull up under the block party standards. Small scale neighborhood event that comes up, and person means an individual, organization, firm, partnership. So regarding block parties, the words neighborhood and organization pop, but not together.
What would it entail to get something in place?
I mean, that would be a city council decision that they want to do that. They would need to take that up and decide if they want to start doing that. And then if they want to district the city.
I would
and
think it would
stuff.
protect the city.
I
against
mean,
any
there
issues.
was some discussion about formalizing
Yes.
the community recognized organizations back then. I don't think they were ever codified.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
I don't believe so.
Could that be a recommendation we make to council?
I would like to see that, whatever process we need to do in order to recommend that the city council wants to have something that clearly states Go ahead. What were you gonna say?
Clearly states like how they would recognize a group.
What would be the formal way to recognize certain neighborhood groups and or associations? I'm sure that's something we'd have to get our legal counsel to write up.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think, since
I know
the,
there'll be a cost, but I not only would it help planning, but it would also be in effect to protect the city against any issues either.
yeah, and so the city council has set their goals for 25, 26. So it'd be something as far as like bringing it to them end of 26 so that they can put it in the hopper for that goal setting session they
Yeah.
do for 27, 28.
Is that something you could also relay to our city administrator, Tammy, that we would like to make a recommendation or have the city
Between
look into?
Heather and I, we can follow up with the
Yeah.
city administrator.
Because I'm afraid there might be a cost and I know we're trying to be
There will be a cost. I know that. yeah.
okay.
Yeah. And then the city council has the opportunity to discuss whether it's a priority and what
Correct.
level of
It's
priority.
not a, yeah, it's probably not a
priority
priority, yeah.
Yeah.
Until it is, right?
And
Yeah,
did,
Yeah.
but I
Ju-
can see having something in place that's very clear and concise that could
Just,
protect the
just so
city.
you know, we will also be requesting in that time frame for a housing study, a transportation plan, and a comp plan update during that 2-year biennium. So we may already be out of our asks, but we'll, but
lot
those
to
are
do.
going to be things we're required to do during 27 and 28.
but it seems like you're not concerned with striking that from.
Right, since we
that-
don't have them and we don't have a way to make them.
Yeah.
I don't have a concern with striking.
I'm fine with that, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
I think, so the page 3-30 is just removing these types of uses from what used to be a public hearing before the planning commission. So you can retain variances, interpretations of this title or the comprehensive plan if there's any questions about if a use is permitted or not, but it's similar. Any city administrator decisions that are appealed come to you. Conditional uses, greenway conditional uses, and flood management district variances and appeals will all still come to this body. And then the section above is where you give a recommendation also. So you'll be giving recommendation on annexation, which is our next probably meeting together. Zone changes, comp plan amendments, all the things that you've been doing recently, you'll continue to give
And you're
recommendations.
referring to the annexation of those 3 properties?
Correct. On Kirkwood, yep.
Just want to make sure there wasn't something else in the pike that we didn't know about.
No, there's very little land adjacent to Gladstone that would be subject to, that's in the UGB, that's adjacent to city services that, so I don't anticipate a large amount of annexation applications.
All right.
Yep. Okay, well, I think I have a lot of information that I can bring back to you. I'm glad we already had one more work session built in and we're not in a rush to get this to a hearing next meeting. But probably what we would do is convene, do the public hearing on the annexation and then do the work session after that. But hopefully I'll have some language that's pretty clear in the packet that you'll have a chance to review. And then we can go over those pieces. And I will change the colors of the blue.
I had a heck of a, I thought it was just me because
No, that is really hard to see.
okay.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've had a font, the 2 that like we use at 3J that doesn't show up on city computers too. So yeah, that's good feedback. Please always let me know if anything seems off.
Thank you very much
yeah.
for all of your hard work.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. All right, on to business from the public. Do we have anyone that wants to speak?
We have not received any requests.
Okay, business from the planning commission. I'm going to start with Jennifer.
No new business from me.
Okay, Commissioner Weiss.
Thank you all for getting into the weeds today. I feel like this is our new normal with kind of some of the scope of responsibility changes that we're going through. So it's fun. I encourage anyone out there that's considering applying or putting your name in for the spot here it is completely doable for a layman or any person in the city who's passionate about anything going on in the city to get onboarded. So I encourage you to do it.
Commissioner Andrew.
None today. Thanks.
Okay. Commissioner Brennan.
None tonight from me.
None tonight.
None tonight, none. Well, I just again want to thank everyone. Serving with you guys is a pleasure because it just gets me, I love the input. I love that we have so many different perspectives, and I think we're a pretty effective machine here. And it is a divine pleasure to be a part of it. So I thank each and every one of you. Also, I want to thank Pat Smith for his time and for all of his years of service. He is going to be greatly missed, not only by me, but I think by everybody on this commission. High value added with him. His knowledge, his wisdom. He always came prepared and then some. I'm just really going to miss working with him. And I want to thank him for all of his time and his service because he did an excellent job. And it was greatly appreciated, not only by this commission, but by the city of Gladstone. And on that note, I would accept a motion to adjourn our meeting.
I would second your comments about Pat Smith
Yeah.
and also make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
And do I have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Weiss made the motion to adjourn the meeting and it was seconded by Commissioner Volbada. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Volbada,
Yes.
Commissioner Weiss.
Yes.
Commissioner Langston,
Yes.
Commissioner Carlson,
Yes.
Commissioner Brennan,
Yes.
Chair Smith.
Yes, meeting is adjourned at 8:12 PM.